From 1878 to 1968, there were 71 lake captains that called Bayview, Wisconsin, on the shore of Lake Michigan, their home. While they lived here, they captained 195 different ships, from tugboats to schooners to steamships, in voyages that took them to every one of the Great Lakes. Join us now for another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we explore not only these captains, but also their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes.
Hi folks, welcome back to another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we talk about the 71 different lake captains that once lived in Bayview, Wisconsin from 1878 to 1968 in the age of sail and steam. This episode, like all the others, is brought to you by the historic Bayview Lake Captains Society. Now, no drone today, nor am I standing in front of a house, but this captain lived in 2 or 3 different places near the intersection of KK and Becher, which you see right behind me, especially down this way as you head toward Becher Street, where some other places he lived. His name was Captain Hans Simonsen. He was a Norwegian immigrant, another from Norway, and he has the distinction, not all the time in Bayview, but throughout his career, captaining one single ship the longest, and that was a 3-masted schooner. He lived in Bayview just a short time while he was captain of this schooner. It was primarily hauling lumber, or timber to be converted into lumber from the yards up north, like a lot of schooners back then did. And he has the distinction of being the captaining that schooner for 26 years longer, in terms of duration, longer than any other Bayview captain captained any one single ship, if that makes sense. So a long time, 3-masted schooner, 26 years on the lakes, pretty substantial. And he captained it right to the very end, too. It was the last, reported as being the last commercially operated 3-masted schooner on the lakes, and therefore he would be the last 3-masted schooner captain in Great Lakes history. One other thing about him that's real interesting is after he retired, he moved over to a farm in Michigan. And while he's there, he makes the flagpole out of wood, hand carved out of wood in the form of a ship's mast. I think it was like 75 feet tall, and it was placed in front of, he custom made it for, and it was placed in front of the Milwaukee County Courthouse. So it would have been late 20s, early 30s. Got the official date coming up. Pretty cool, pretty amazing. So, more of Hans Simonsen coming up with our narrator Simon Stanhope. Hope you enjoy it. Until then, hats off to our Bayview Lake Captains. Bye-bye.
Welcome to another installment of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we discuss the lives of the 71 different lake captains that once lived in Bayview, Wisconsin, during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, in the age of sail and steam. This discussion will include their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes. Here is the map of lake captains' homes in Bayview to show you where this episode takes place. Its location focuses primarily on the large green arrow. Today we will be discussing the life of Captain Hans A. Simonsen, a Norwegian immigrant who became an important part of Great Lakes maritime history as the captain in the late 1920s of the last remaining three-masted schooner still operating commercially on the lakes. He also captained it longer, 26 years, than any ship captained by any other Bayview lake captain. 4 of those 26 years he captained it while living on Becher Street in Bayview. Captain Simonsen also has the unusual distinction of carving entirely from hand, at age 73, when he was retired and living on his farm in Michigan, a 2-piece, 75-foot-tall wooden flagpole in the form of a ship's mast. He specifically constructed it after Milwaukee County approved his bid of $288 over a steel one that would have cost $400. Once completed, his flagpole was then placed in front of the Milwaukee County Courthouse in time for the American Legion Convention in 1941. Captain Hans A. Simonsen was born in May 1868 in Norway. He immigrated into the U.S. via New York in April 1886 when he was 18. His parents likely immigrated with him, but this isn't confirmed. It's also unknown if he had any siblings. His first 4 years in America, 1886 to 1890, are unaccounted for, but given that he was 18 when he immigrated, it's likely he was a sailor in Norway before coming over to the USA. Many Bayview lake captains that immigrated were found to have started sailing professionally in their home countries when they were teenagers, and even earlier. Hans Simonsen first appears in Milwaukee in 1891, living in and around Walker's Point through 1900 and probably 1902, working as a sailor. During this time he also secured his first lake captain job in 1899 of a schooner with one of the most unusual names ever, spelled out in 5 letters, ABCFM. This stands for American Board of Commissioners of Foreign Missions. It's unknown how long he remained a lake captain past 1899. Then, in 1903, he became captain of the three-masted schooner Lucia A. Simpson, and he would remain its captain for the next 26 years, through 1929, and the conclusion of his 38-year sailing career on the lakes. The Lucia A. Simpson, under Hans Simonsen's command, was destined to become the last remaining commercially operated three-masted schooner on the Great Lakes. He remained living in Walker's Point through 1906. In 1907, Hans Simonsen moved to the very northwest border of Bayview, near the intersection of Kinnikinnick Avenue and Becher Street. His exact address somewhere between 309 to 333 East Becher Street. Then, from 1909 to 10, he moved a few blocks west to 101 West Becher Street, near the intersection of West Becher and First Streets in Bayview. His residences at both of these locations have since been torn down. During his 4 years in Bayview, 1907 to 1910, Hans Simonsen remained captain of the Lucia A. Simpson. Interestingly, both of these residences for him were near the Milwaukee Cedar Company on Becher Street. This lumber yard was owned by Charles J. Sanderson, who also owned the schooner Lucia A. Simpson. His home was in Milwaukee on 5th Street, just outside of Bayview's western boundary. The Milwaukee Cedar Company is the second documented lumber yard in Bayview. Sanderson founded it in about 1901, the same year he purchased the Lucia A. Simpson, undoubtedly to use to haul lumber down from the northern woods of Wisconsin and Michigan for his Bayview lumber yard. The first Bayview lumber yard was the B.C. Horsch and Kearns Coal and Wood Company. Begun 18 years earlier, in 1893, it was located at the current site of Collectivo Coffee on East Lincoln Avenue, at the intersection of South Howell, South Kinnickinnick, and East Lincoln Avenues. This yard was started, owned, and operated by Bayview Lake Captain Thomas Kearns and his Bayview Lake Captain brothers Timothy and Patrick. They all lived on East Liners Street. See earlier episodes on this channel for these Kearns brothers. The Lucia A. Simpson wintered on the Kinnickinnick River, tied up to a dock owned or rented by Sanderson's nearby lumber yard on Becher Street. In the second half of 1910, Captain Simonsen moved back to Walker's Point. He would remain there for the next 2 years, through 1912. The reason for this change is the death of his wife, Anna, who died sometime over the winter of 1909-10. The new Walker's Point address is that of Anna's parents. Hans moved in with them after her death, along with his and Anna's 3 children. 3 years later, on 20th November 1913, Hans Simonsen remarried. His new bride was Selma Carlson, and they were married in Stonington, Michigan, overlooking Little Bay de Noc, on the southern shore of Michigan's northern peninsula, about 80 miles northeast of Green Bay, Wisconsin. He also helped with her 2, possibly 3 children, in addition to his own. Yet another heroic Bayview Lake captain that helped wives and their young children from another marriage after their husbands had died. His new home in Michigan was on a farm. Through all of these changes, he continued as captain of the Lucia A. Simpson, and would remain so through 1929. In 1928, the year before his last as captain of the Simpson, he and his crew temporarily vacated the Simpson, which was moored near the Becher Street Bridge on the Kinnickinnick River, for a special evening party given by Gladys E. Sanderson, the daughter of the owner, Charles J. Sanderson, who attended this party with his wife. The ship was decorated with lights that included Japanese lanterns, candles, and the ship's own lights. Entertainment featured games and dancing before dinner. As early as 1922, the Lucia A. Simpson began to be the focus of many news articles across the lakes, as the days of sail began to fade into memory. Its captain throughout this extensive media coverage was Hans Simonsen. These articles, including some looking nostalgically back at history, continued until as late as 1980, and were published in newspapers in Wisconsin and other states, to include Ohio, Indiana, Delaware, and Illinois. All were melancholy, end of an era, end of the age of sail themed, containing a photo of the ship under way, and noting the Simpson as one of the last, and later confirmed as the last, commercial three-masted sailing schooner on the lakes. In the summer of 1929, the Lucia A. Simpson, the Great Lakes' last remaining commercially operated three-masted schooner, and still captained by Hans Simonsen, took on its final job. This one was a bit different from bringing down cedar posts from northern Wisconsin and Michigan to Milwaukee. It was actually way different. On 6th July 1929, the Lucia A. Simpson was chartered by treasure hunters. However, these treasure hunters weren't looking for gold, silver, or jewels that would actually be found off the Florida Keys 50 years later. No, this particular treasure they were seeking was more conventional. They were looking for shipwrecks in shallow water in the Great Lakes that would have had cargoes preserved in the cold, fresh water. In preparation for this special mission, the Simpson spent a week in dry dock in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, on the shore of Lake Michigan, fitting out. During this time, Captain Simonsen told a gathering of curious reporters that the mission's goal was to raise grain and coal from the cargo holds of the wrecks. He told them that corn and wheat, submerged for 10 years or less, can still be dried out and taken to market. Coal can also be removed as is, though metals like iron ore were too heavy to lift from the depths. However, the ship never got the chance to look for this treasure. After just a day underway, it was hit by a storm that took down its mizzenmast and caused other extensive damage. Water started to enter the hull, and all of its available crew, including its treasure-hunting passengers, manned the pumps for 12 hours. Only the knowledgeable Captain Simonsen saved the ship and everyone aboard. His decades of experience led him to steer the heavily damaged schooner into what he knew were the cross-lake car ferry lanes, where they might be spotted. Sure enough, the Simpson's distress flag was seen, and its 4 blasts of the horn distress signal was heard by the car ferry Ann Arbor 7, which came to its rescue. Once on scene, a line from the Ann Arbor was successfully thrown over to Captain Simonsen and his crew on the Lucia A. Simpson, and they were successfully taken in tow towards the Wisconsin shoreline. Once there, the U.S. Coast Guard was able to get a small craft out to take over from the Ann Arbor 7 and finish bringing the Simpson to safety. The crew and treasure-seeking passengers had gotten lucky, saved by the quick thinking and experience of Captain Simonsen. The Lucia A. Simpson never sailed again. It was towed the next spring, 1930, out of Milwaukee, still partially dismasted from the storm of 1929, up to Sturgeon Bay, to join a graveyard of ships, where it sat for several years. It was then purchased by the Town Harbor Yacht Club in Chicago for use as their clubhouse. Unfortunately, it wasn't there for long when it caught fire and was destroyed in 1935. In 1930, at age 62, with his 26-year tenure as captain of the Lucia A. Simpson now concluded, Captain Hans Simonsen decided to leave the sailing profession and settle permanently ashore to his farm in Stonington, Michigan, overlooking beautiful Little Bay de Noc, just a few miles across the bay from Escanaba, Michigan. He was documented still farming his land there 10 years later, in 1940, at age 72. The next year, 1941, he astonishingly hand-carved out of wood a brand-new flagpole to be placed in front of Milwaukee's county courthouse. But this wasn't just any flagpole. It was in the form of a ship's mast, assembled in 2 parts. The lower part was 50 feet high, and the second, upper part, was 35 feet high, overlapping 10 feet where they were joined together, ship-style. All told, with both parts assembled, it was 75 feet high, all carved by the hand of a former Bayview Lake captain. How all this came about is unknown, but the county had chosen Captain Simonsen's wooden pole over a steel one to save money. Simonsen's cost $288. The one built out of steel would have cost $400, not a small difference in those days. Hans's hand-carved flagpole, he carved it at age 73 on his farm in Michigan, was placed in its concrete base on 3rd September 1941, in preparation to fly the Stars and Stripes for the American Legion Convention, and would remain in use permanently thereafter. How long it lasted is unknown. One of Hans Simonsen's last activities of his life occurred in April 1942, aged 74, when he tried his hand at politics, running for the Board of Review in his home of Stonington, Michigan, but lost. Hans Simonsen was first married to Annie Hagen in 1893. She was also a Norwegian immigrant, having been born there in 1885. They had 4 children, Arthur, Ethel, Ralph, and Dorothy. After wife Anna died, sometime over the winter of 1909-10, Hans married his second wife Selma Carlson in 1913, joining his children with her daughters Ruth, Bernice, and Roger. It appears they had one child together, a daughter Cora. It's unclear when both Captain Hans A. Simonsen and his 2 wives died. There is no record found of their deaths, but, perhaps oddly, or perhaps not, there is a Hans Simonsen, though no middle initial, that was buried in the Falnes churchyard in Falnes, Norway, on 4th August 1954, with the same birth year, 1868, though 1 month off, showing April instead of March. In 1954, he would have been 86 years old, so it is possible this could be him, but that is not known. There is no photo available of the gravestone. Could his second wife have died some time after he built the flagpole in 1941, and he decided to move back home to Norway? Certainly there were many others with the same name, especially in Norway, though, as mentioned, only the grave in Falnes churchyard matches his birth year. Note also there are no graves discovered for him in either Wisconsin or Michigan. The Falnes, Norway church and churchyard is on the southwest coast of Norway, on the island of Karmøy, about 500 miles northeast of Scotland, across the North Sea. It is in a spectacular and beautiful setting, on a small hill that overlooks a large bay leading out to the sea. The church itself was built in 1851, though there has been a church at this location since 1620, and looks like a lighthouse, with a 3-story entry tower that has a representative square structure on top of it, where a light would normally be placed. There is also a large wooden square-rigged ship model hanging from the roof inside the centre of the church, above the pews for the congregation. Thanks for watching. This photograph isn't about Bayview or its lake captains, but it's from the same era of Great Lakes maritime history. We thought we'd close with it for enjoyment, as it captures the spirit of the era. If you'd like to read more details about Captain Hans A. Simonsen, as well as the sources for the information contained in today's video, you can find these and more in the book Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, for sale now by individual volumes in both ebook and paperback on both Amazon.com and HenschelHouseBooks.com. All proceeds from book sales go to support various maritime history projects related to Bayview's lake captains. One of these is a plaque and marker with the captains' names and addresses on it, as part of the creation of the Bayview Lake Captains Historic District, which will be the first of its kind in America. If you would like to contribute to support these projects, to include this and other markers honouring Bayview's lake captains, with 100% of all donations and contributions in all forms going to support them, please consider contributing to us through the listings found on our website, under the Contribute button, as well as in the end credits at the conclusion of this video. Note, we are not a 501c3, so contributions are not tax-deductible. If, for some reason, we are unable to secure these markers, then all funds donated to this site will be given as a cash donation to the museum ship SS City of Milwaukee in Manistee, Michigan. This is the only surviving intact ship that was once captained by a Bayview lake captain, and in its case was captained by at least 2, and likely 3, totaling over 20 years between them. Finally, we also have free self-guided walking tours of Bayview's 71 lake captains' homes, using only your phone. It's simple and easy. Just go to our website shown here, find the item on the menu bar at the upper left named Free Self-Guided Walking Tours, and then scroll down to find the map with instructions. Zoom in by street. When you find a captain's house you're interested in, click on it and details appear on the right, along with a link to the YouTube episode from this channel that provides the biography of the captain that lived there. You can also read about his sailing adventures while living in that particular house by going to the website menu item, Sailing Adventures, and looking up his name. It's free, fun, and available any time you're out walking. just bring along your phone. I'm Simon Stanhope, narrator for these episodes. Join us again soon for the next chapter of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains.